Hi and welcome. I'm so glad that we could be together. I'm really excited to share with you the body of work that I call the 3 Core Connections Embodied Perspective that's grown me over 40 years. And I'm excited particularly because this is not a belief system. It's not information that I'm going to download and hope that you believe, but rather it's an inquiry into a way of looking at how do I function as a deeply embodied human being? What is that? What did Joseph Pilates mean by whole body health? Which is really what is the foundation of all the great body-mind disciplines. How do we be related to gravity? How do we be related to an engagement to being in the world? How does that occur? And how that occurs is we begin to get in touch with how we function and how we're related within our environment. So just to tell you a little story of how this came about. First of all, this is 18th century anatomy by Albinus. And many years ago, when I first was introduced to Pilates, I was very, very curious about what is it? Because I knew about it. I was running a health center in New Orleans and was a yoga teacher. And I had the opportunity when I moved to Boulder to study with Romana when she was helping Amy and Rachel first open up the Pilates Center of Boulder. So it was a great opportunity. But at the moment that I began my training, I decided a very pivotal thing, and that was to stop doing yoga, to really understand what Pilates is. So for 4 years, I just did Pilates. And within that time, I began to feel very held. And it was very different than how I'd felt in my yoga practice. So I was really curious about what is that feeling? But I didn't know at the time that I was overstabilizing. I found this out later as I began to study and really explore another question which occurred to me, which is, what is core, rather than another concept of core? What is core from the body's perspective? And that inquiry, that question, took me to study with great pioneers of movement and body work. I became a structural integration practitioner, studied with many great somatic pioneers, Bonnie Bainbridge-Cohen, Emily Conrad, Judith Aston, and just with a desire to really get a sense of what is the effect of gravity? How does gravity, when we fight it, what effect does that have? And when we partner with gravity, what effect does that have? This is a profound question. So these particular drawings really began to speak to me a lot, which is why I created this poster out of bringing that 18th century drawing into the 21st century. And how do we begin to understand how core is not just a hardening, doing something to myself perspective, which is very biomechanical, but rather core awareness, vestibular awareness, is a relational way of being with gravity and spatial orientation. How do I open up? How do I begin to engage with my environment, with the people around me? How do I become more understanding of who I am and what I need? This occurs through a deep understanding of relationship with ourselves and with others. So vestibular awareness begins with inner ear awareness. These are things that we would go into on a much deeper level as we work together. But what does that mean, inner ear? Inner ear, the inner ear nerves are the first nerves to myelinate. They're the first nerves to come online as we're forming as a fetus in the womb. And that's our relationship to gravity. But what's fascinating about that is the inner ear feeds soft peripheral vision, how we open and create spatial awareness throughout our whole body. So knowing that will completely change how your body is overly compressed during the day. How do you decompress? How do you know how to help yourself? How do you know how to not overuse your elbows and your knees as you move, even especially in yoga and Pilates? This happens a lot. We don't realize how much we overwork and then prevent the deep midline, the psoas support, the softening of the chest becomes hardened and exhausted. So understanding vestibular awareness takes us into a deep understanding of gravity, which I'm calling down the back. So the yellow in the poster shows that relatedness through core, through my hands and feet, related to the two directions of my spine, and that relationship of the down of the shoulder blades waterfalling. That's why the blue on the poster. How does the shoulder blade waterfall toward the sit bone, tailbone, into the tripod of the foot? How does that relate? How does that allow me to yield to gravity? And then from that grounding, that yielding, how does internal lift naturally occur? We don't realize, what does it feel like to naturally allow the foot to move, to feel the glide, the movement of the bones and the glide and the lift of the inner ankle? That's a huge distinction. What's the push off, the gentle push off that allows me to feel internal lift through the dome of my foot, the dome of my pelvic floor, the dome of my diaphragm, the dome of the thoracic inlet? Just how does my chest widen? How does that feed the dome of my palate and internal lift? How does that occur? Softening and widening the chest. And how does the center of the body, so we're feeding, we're grounding through the feet, we're creating lift through the inner ear, and how does the center of the body, the breath center, how does that create a multi-directional way of breathing? So my back opens as I breathe, my chest softens, my sides widen, pelvic floor and diaphragm are postural support. How they function together makes all the difference in the world to how my body is able to self-heal. And so that's what the three cores are all about. Core as relationship is a way of being with the way that we ground, the way that we center and breathe, the way that we suspend and reach, and how we are evoking core. That's why the yellow in hands and feet. We think of training core, but actually when we allow core through a coordinated, integrated way of being with ourselves, which is what tensegrity, biointegrity is all about, when we allow core to be about a relationship of how my foot relates to my head, how my foot relates to my hand. So tensegrity and biotensegrity is how the bones, which are discontinuous, they are jointed, how they are held together by all the soft tissue in the body. Muscles, the fascia, the blood, the internal organs, all of that work together in allowing my being to be supported as a relationship with myself, a relationship with others, a relationship with my environment, and that begins when we're in the womb, how we're forming in the womb. And guess what? We never ever lose the embryo, which is really mind-blowing. That's how our bodies form, and that forming continues. We continue to develop that way. We continue to self-heal that way as we're born and as we grow and as we move toward our dying time. It's really unbelievable what's actually happening. It's so different than what we think in biomechanics. Biointelligence is a related way of being with our own nature. which is part of nature. So this way of being with ourselves brings us to a very receptive and perceptual awareness, a way of being in the world with core as relationship with gravity, ourselves, one another, and our environment. And this distinction will change everything for you. It'll change how you are with yourself. It'll change how you teach. It will change how you speak to clients. So my real desire is to have this work feed your voice. And that's the bottom line. Rather than saying things exactly the way I'm saying them, my real purpose in creating this body of work is to feed your vision, to feed how you're thinking, to enable your vision to come forward. Because the more we get in touch with the way things are really happening, what's going on, that brings forth our authenticity. That brings us into a way of being that's true, and that is rejuvenating, and that is really empowering, deeply empowering. So I look forward to talking with you further. I look forward to hearing what you're curious about. I'd love to talk with you about mentoring, about the possibility of collaboration, and let's just stay in touch. Let me know what you're excited about. Let me know what you're curious about. What is frustrating? Let's be in touch. Thank you so much. See you soon.